Text 1 or 2? Huh? With 1. Okay, no purport. Reading from Canto 6, Chapter 17, Text 1, where there's no purport, then 2, very short purport, and then 4 and 5. So we're going through 1 through 5. 117, 6, 17, 1 through 5. Maybe we should chant. We'll chant the first one. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Yatascha Nantas. Tasyai Kritva Dishe Namaha. Vidyadharas Chitraketus. Chara Ganane Charaha. Chachara Ganane Charaha. Srila Shukadeva Goswami said, after offering obeisances to the direction from which Ananta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, had disappeared, Chitraketu began traveling in outer space as the head of the Vidyadharas. Text 2 and 3. Being praised by great sages and saints and by the inhabitants of Siddha Loka and Charana Loka, Chitraketu, the most powerful mystic yogi, wandered about enjoying life for millions of years with bodily strength and senses free from deterioration. He traveled within the valleys of Sumeru Mountain, which is the place of perfection for various kinds of mystic power. In those valleys, he enjoyed life with the women of the Vidyadhara Loka by chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Hari. Purport. It is to be understood that Maharaj Chitraketu, although surrounded by beautiful women from Vidyadhara Loka, did not forget to glorify the Lord by chanting the holy name of the Lord. It has been proved in many places that one who is not contaminated by any material condition, who is a pure devotee engaged in chanting the glories of the Lord, should be understood to be perfect. And text 4 and 5. One time, while King Chitraketu was traveling in outer space on a brilliantly effulgent airplane given to him by Lord Vishnu, he saw Lord Shiva surrounded by siddhas and charanas. Lord Shiva was sitting in an assembly of great saintly persons and embracing Parvati on his lap with his arm. Chitraketu laughed loudly and spoke within the hearing of Parvati. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in this connection, Bhaktim Bhutim Harir Datva Swa Vichedanu Bhutaye Devya Shapena Vritatvam Nitvatam Swatike Nayat. The purport is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead wanted to bring Chitraketu to Vaikuntha Loka as soon as possible. The Lord's plan was that Chitraketu be cursed by Parvati to become Vritrasura, so that in his next life he could quickly return home back to Godhead. There have been many instances in which a devotee acting as a demon has been brought to the kingdom of God by the mercy of the Lord. For Parvati to be embraced by Lord Shiva was natural in a relationship between husband and wife. This was nothing extraordinary for Chitraketu to see. Nonetheless, Chitraketu laughed loudly to see Lord Shiva in that situation, even though he should not have done so. Thus, he was eventually cursed, and this curse was the cause of his returning home back to Godhead. And then the next verse, he's going to make a remark. Hey, Lord Shiva. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Chapter 17 follows chapter 16. And in chapter 16, there's a lengthy great fortune of Chitraketu being present before the personality of Godhead, Ananta, and the four Kumaras. And Ananta is addressing, and Chitraketu is offering prayers. He's a privileged person, or a fortunate person, because the personality of Godhead is in various forms, is interacting with him directly. And that direct interaction indicates something. He's a recipient of mercy. Now, why is that the partiality of the Supreme Lord can be called in question? Why is he being partial over here and dismissive over there? It has everything to do with the inclination or the attitude of the devotee or the individual. He, the personality of Godhead, reciprocates according to one's regard for him. And go back, and where did he get that inclination from? Well, he got the inclination from Narada Muni. Narada Muni is a savior of many people, Chitraketu being one of them. So, and in the attached householder state, we're going back some chapters, but as an attached householder, he wanted a son. In other words, the material desire was ruling his life, overwhelming to a vast extent, and he was powerful. How could he marry so many wives? 1,999,000 wives became envious when one of the wives became the mother of their son, etc., etc. So he, Chitraketu, had Angira Muni's association, then Narada's association, and then his son spoke, and then Narada spoke when he was at maximum attentiveness to Narada's words. And what's Narada going to give? He's the bearer of the Lord Bhakti Shakti. So he's going to give bhakti, and he got it. And then after Narada left, he engaged himself in ways that entitled him, it purified him further, qualified him further. But he had, the seed. This question came up, and did a little research to find out what our acharyas have to say about Bhakti Lata Bija. What's that? It's a nice question. The question was, on the one hand and on the other hand. So what's the Bhakti Lata Bija? All living entities, according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi. So love Krishna, not just Krishna Prema is already within. So what's the seed of bhakti? Because it's all that Krishna Prema is already within. What is it? And there's different explanations, but I like particularly Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation that the seed is the awakened tendency to hear and serve the personality Bhagavan, affinity for Bhagavan, specifically the affinity for hearing. So it's awakening the affinity for hearing. That's the seed. And then the seed matures. The affinity for hearing grows and grows and grows potentially, and up to the mature stage. So here he's at the mature stage, but the seed, of course, Krishna Prema is already within, but the seed came from the bearer of the Lord's Bhakti Shakti. And he had some nice says from Angira Muni. And so it grew. His affinity for hearing grew. And then in that stage of austerity, etc., the personality of God had appeared. And discussion, instructions, his prayers. So the duration of time, the narration is swift, but the duration of time is extensive. So the cultivation of that seed of bhakti grew and grew and grew, and now Lord Vishnu has affinity for him. Here's the first verse again. After offering obeisances to the direction from which Anantashesh, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, had disappeared, Chitraketu began traveling in outer space. That doesn't give the detail of how Vishnu gave him this vimana, but somewhere along the line, it was a gift, and he was in utilizing it. There's something. It appears to be something of a mix. So he's with a bunch of Vidyadhara women. At the same time, he's engaged in glorification of the personality of Godhead wherever he went. That's his transcendental attachment. And then we're hearing Vishnu wanted him to come quickly. So a reversal was arranged. The reversal word is a phrase that Bhaktisiddhanta used. You're going this direction, and all of a sudden you're going in the opposite direction, like a head-on collision or something. So the Lord's plan prevails. That his plan, he doesn't interfere with free will of the living entity. So, but his plan is commensurate with the free will of the living entity. And Chitraketu, otherwise, we live for the duration of natural life. And he's in this Vidyadhara realm. The duration of life is much longer than in the earthly realm. And he's the king of the Vidyadharas. So who knows how long? So Vishnu arranged for him to come back. There's a lot of on the one hand and the other hand. On the one hand, why did he laugh loudly? That's not nice. It's insulting. And she took it as an insult, not to her, but to Lord Shiva. And then what he said, etc. His laughter was an outburst of appreciation. What saintly person can do this and remain undisturbed? Lord Shiva, you're in another category. That was his laughter, his burst of laughter, and then his words and his appreciation. And and going forward in time, he, Lord Shiva, and Chitraketu were friends, meaning Chitraketu was a very elevated person, not ordinary person, to the degree that he has a friendship-like relationship and thus can say things to Lord Shiva. Rather than offer prayers with folded palms, he's speaking to him in a friendly way. Because otherwise, between friends, one can express laughter and say some words of appreciation, which other people may not understand because it's between friends and that the friends understand. It wasn't insulting. It was glorification and appreciation. So what he did, and then what Parvati did, and then becoming Vritrasura, and the Indra, and the whole sequence of events that preceded and followed are it's in the life of a pure devotee, and therefore is under the direction of the internal potency, not the external potency. It's not he got spanked because he did a misdeed. It's the Lord's plan, and the internal potency is acting in the case of such devotees. There's a phrase, one of Bhaktisiddhanta had a nice way of explaining difficulties in spiritual life. And one of them is like they're pertinent to what's here. His language is unique, so to represent his language improperly is not ideal. But something to the effect that sometimes the Lord desires to test the ardor of his devotee. So he places the devotee in some difficulty. Now, in this, it's not exactly this case because the Lord knew his ardor, and his it didn't change. He immediately accepted the curse, immediately accepted the curse, and then did what he did as Vritrasura. He acted as a demon with a demon body, although his consciousness was something else. He was, he was compliant with the Lord's plan. So, but other than this direct bringing Chitraketu back to Godhead quickly, when difficulties come, unexpected difficulties, or expected unexpected difficulties, when difficulties come, how do we respond? That's one of the ways of evaluating the Krishna consciousness of oneself or others. Like, what's the place of shelter? And if there's no place of shelter, then that's one kind of behavior and speech. And if there is a place of shelter, there's another kind of behavior and speech. So Chitraketu had the right kind, and he accepted, and he achieved spiritual perfection quickly. by Lord Vishnu's plan. So supposing it's not, swiftly go back to Godhead, still, what's our place of shelter? And so, or what can we do presently to prepare for the unexpected? Because the unexpected can go the other direction, some special praise or some special disgrace. And then what's the place of shelter? Isn't it that a lot of misery comes from people having an expectation it's not going to be like that because I become a devotee and then something happens. That's the opposite. Like why? Why do bad things happen to good people? Question. And when it's there, the good person is a devotee. There's an answer. To understand the Lord, the wish, desire, the plan of the Supreme Lord in those circumstances. Where's the train going next? Who knows? You may not know. You may know. You may not know. And in either case, what's the place of shelter? Let me stay the course of complete shelter and seeking the protection of the personality of Godhead. That's the expression that's used again and again. Like, to understand what's gold, you rub it against a stone, or you put the metal that looks like gold in and melt it and see what happens. Molten gold, then the gold separates from the alloys. I don't know how it works, but that's what it's described. So the heat of circumstance, stay with it. Stay with the place of shelter. And the circumstance is what it is. And my relationship with Krishna is not dependent upon the circumstance. No, that's elevated, but so degrees of difficulty may be given by Krishna to a devotee, commensurate with their capacity to handle the difficulty. What Prahlad Maharaj had to endure, or what Haridas Thakur had to endure, or etc., etc., examples of elevated devotees, what they had to endure, it would break us. But Krishna doesn't break us. He commensurate with our capacity, he may give some hardship, some difficulty. So keep your seatbelt fastened, because it may not be happening at the moment, but wait a while. It's a rough air and bumpy ride and difficult time. So what's the place of shelter? So back to Chitraketu, his place of shelter was without question, and his behavior was induced, and Parvati's response was induced, and he went back to Godhead quickly in comparison to what might have happened otherwise. But the Lord's plan prevails. So in normal circumstances, one final point, it's the same point as earlier, he doesn't interfere with the free will of the living entity. So one can assume, since that's a fact, Chitraketu wanted to go back to Godhead, and the Lord was reciprocating with his desire. So when there's a desire to go back to Godhead, just like there was a discussion yesterday evening, what does it mean, and what's the price that one has to pay? What's the adhikar one has to carry to achieve that? But it's not, a change of address. It's a change of consciousness. And the full shelter is that precondition. And then when it's back to Godhead, that's back to Godhead. Change of consciousness. and the circumstances may be whatever the circumstances may be. Tribulation, praise and honor, whatever it may be. But nothing sticks because the relationship is everything. That's Krishna Bhakti. So let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna very much. When we started out with the first verse, Guru Maharaj, how one can be simultaneously attached to the transcendence and also have the sensual enjoyment, where Chitraketu said about Vidyadhara woman. Is this like a perfect stage of like perfect
It's
stage of?
it's it's a little hard to understand. More than a little hard to understand.
Okay.
So what was his consciousness when doing what's described what he did? What was his consciousness? And we can assume it is not the explanation isn't given, so it's difficult. But it wasn't the worldly enjoyment tinge. If it wasn't the worldly enjoyment tinge, what was it? That's the question.
Yes.
Not the same, but it's something like his friend. Lord Shiva is not only with Parvati, but a whole entourage, a whole bevy of many, many, many ladies. In fact, the arrangement was if any men came in the vicinity where Lord Shiva was with Parvati and his female associates, they would become a female because
Mhm.
that's it. But it's not in the mood of enjoyment. So if it's not in the mood of enjoyment, what is it? That's the question. A particular kind of service that's, little different than our material conception of what pure bhakti is. But Lord Shiva type of unalloyed devotion to the personality of Godhead that's difficult to understand from a worldly. So one has to look at it through a different lens. That by default, pure devotion doesn't indulge in the temporary. So where it looks like there's indulgence, what is it? It's not. It's not indulgence. It's not enjoyment of the temporary. It's outside of our experience.
It's a perfect system.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that therefore perfect souls do that type of thing. He was doing Shiva, Lord Shiva did, and it's not a standard. Oh, I can't wait till and that's the glorification that Chitraketu. What kind of who is that devotee that can be in this situation and not be disturbed? It's pointing to it's a different kind of a man being with a number of women. Very different, very different. So what is it? It's a kind of devotion that the Lord has had an arrangement for him and for his dear friend Lord Shiva.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Maybe 2 or 3 points. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, thank you. I think this is one uh, particular incident. I think it's kind of remind us how unpredictable the world could be.
Yeah.
And but the beauty here is, although this is a very unexpected circumstance, but
Mm.
by the arrangement of the Lord and his devotee, it turns out to be a magnificent glorification of both the devotee and the Supreme Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think this is perhaps one, this is a review of what happens to the review of the previous life of of Vritrasura after he, I think, was killed. That that part has been already narrated in previous chapter of this canto. This is kind of a question answer how Vritrasura reached to that specific state. And I think at this point you also mentioned uh, the quality of his being single-mindedly taking shelter of the
Mm.
Supreme Lord. I think that does not comes very easily. It takes very many lifetimes of cultivation and association, like how King Chitraketu has been doing for his life, for his previous life.
Yes.
And it's just I'm thinking about the verse from Bhagavad Gita is Jamanam Bahunam Jamanam Ante Yanavam Mam Prapadyante Vasudeva Saraiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. It's very, very rare to find such a person. And I think Chitraketu's story is kind of glorious in a sense that um, if I remember correctly, one of the prayer Chitraketu, oh sorry, not Chitraketu, is Vritrasura. Vritrasura. One of the prayers uh, Vritrasura said was quoted, I think, by the Nagapatis when they're praying to Lord Krishna to spare Kali, a serpent.
Mm.
And I think so it's kind of a, I feel like it's like he is a historical figure there, and he what he has said before even is known to later time by the Nagapatis. And it's I'm just trying to yeah, this is the one. Nanaka prishtam na chaparamishtam na sarva bhaumam na sarsadhipatyam the yoga siddhi apunar bhavamba samanjasatva virahaya kankshe. Basically, yes, I do not want liberation if I have to give up the lotus feet. It's
And it's the
very,
very same Sanskrit in both cases, or very close Sanskrit.
uh, it's the expression is very similar, perhaps except the last sentence.
Mm.
I think both of them are both Nagapatis and Vritrasura are highly elevated in that sense.
The whole thing is the whole thing is puzzling. It's not expressed right here by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, but Krishna is looking after uh, maintaining the devotion, the purity of devotion of King Indra, because Indra's, the target in Vritrasura's demise. So there's multiple purposes being accomplished with one thing. One of the characteristics of or qualities of Krishna by one thing, he's achieving many things.
I have one question.
You have.
So in Chitrakesu case, he's a pure devotee.
Yeah.
And when he got punishment or curse from Krishna, then he could recognize and he has a full surrender, or then he accepted that.
Yes.
But for ordinary souls, like when there is a difficulties comes,
That's our
then
topic.
then how do we recognize there is a punishment or coming from the Lord? How to see that?
Well, it depends on your intelligence. And Krishna is the source of that intelligence. So if Krishna gives, then you'll understand. If Krishna doesn't give, you won't understand. But it doesn't mean if I don't understand that I lose shelter. The faithful person, I may or may not understand. But one thing is, I will not budge an inch from your lotus feet, whatever it is. So that's the faithful quality, whether one understands or doesn't understand. The cause, the purpose, the destiny, the destination of where this is going. We may not know. It's okay. With faith, you stay fixed. The place of shelter. That kind. They'll say it the other way. That kind of intelligence that that's rare. The kind of intelligence where you don't know, that's common. But and therefore, that's a test of faith. It's not the same, but it's similar to Vamana demonstrating the faithfulness of Bali. By humiliating him, he knew. Others didn't know. And they criticized the dwarf Brahmin. Why did you do this? He gave everything. I wanted to show you all. Just see. So, is it that Bali knew that was the purpose of Vamana Dev, is to show everybody? Not necessarily. Anything else? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hmm.
Seeking the shelter of Krishna during difficulties,
During where?
during tribulations or difficulties.
Tribulation. Okay.
Does it? I have this question. Does it come under the category of being selfish? It's like
No. Yeah. Certainly, some persons take shelter because they have a motivation. They want to be known as whatever, like a shield, or rather than just selfless. So is it possible? Yes. Is it necessary? No. Then what's in it for me? Real shelter is, it's like the discussion yesterday of what sincerity is, or there isn't something else going on. And commonly there's something else going on, or a number of something else's. So pure devotion, just like this comment of the what it takes to make a diamond, what it takes to make Chitraketu, what it takes to make the associates of the eternal cowherd boys qualified to be with the eternal cowherd boys, Krita Punya Punya. So it's a gradual, staying fixed. Okay. One more?
One small thing. When we said we discussed about it's like a Lord does not interfere with the free will.
It doesn't.
At the same time, Lord has a plan.
Yeah.
So in this Chitraketu's case, he had a plan. At the same time, how we need to understand where Parvati Devi's anger was also involved in it.
Well, it was part. She's under the control of the internal potency.
So it's all the Lord's plan to enact.
Yeah. Because it would be incomplete. How else? How else could be according to his plan? But she's part of his plan.
So the anger is also
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of examples. The Brahma Vimohan Lila is a nice example. The Lord induced him to behave out of character, or Maharaj Parikshit. The Lord induced him so the Bhagavatam could be spoken. So he did something that's completely against his nature. It's not. Then back to the question: it looks like he's interfering with the free will of Maharaj Parikshit. But what's the free will? Whatever the Lord wants, that's what I want. And so it's not inconsistent. What did the Lord want? He wanted to have Maharaj Parikshit be the recipient of the Srimad Bhagavatam and go back to Godhead afterwards.
so where I'm going here, Guru Maharaj, is
Reciprocation.
we do see devotees getting anger and all. Is it
That's different.
that's a different?
That's different.
Okay.
Okay. Prabhupada ki jai.